I'm going to talk about something that I think a lot of people are interested in, even though it's not a new release. I was listening to Tales from Topographic Oceans this week. This is the sixth Yes album, and it came out in an interesting time in music history because, or at least popular music history, because I feel like, between the years of like 1967 and like maybe 1974 were maybe the really great years for pop music because it's like the music industry was relatively healthy at the time and record labels were willing to take chances on just about anything. And at that time, like, if a band like Yes had a stream of hits like Roundabout, I've Seen All Good People, there was, I'm guessing, pressure to just keep pushing that sort of thing out. And, here John Anderson and Steve Howe concoct this whole multi-part suite that's based off of the autobiography of a yogi. And it's like this whole spiritual thing. And I've been really getting into this because it was one of the first, if not the first Yes album I ever heard.
Oh
And
wow.
I found it so impenetrable at the time that I first listened to it. And it kind of put me off Yes for a long time. But it's interesting how slowly through these issues of the super deluxe editions of like Fragile and Close to the Edge and the Yes album, I've gradually become more and more of a Yes appreciator. And so now I come to this album as a fan, and it's a whole new perspective. So my thoughts are, it could have maybe been a single disc, but in the CD era, there's really only just a few parts here and there that I think, gosh, this goes on a little bit too long. Like the first 10 minutes of side 2 is just like, they're going for another repeat, going for another repeat. And then some of the most astonishing Yes music I've ever heard kicks in with that acoustic stuff that Steve Howe's doing.
Oh yeah,
And
that section's amazing.
yeah, there's some like really, kind of like, this is not engaging me stuff on it. But then there's some other stuff on it that's just breathtaking. And it's like among some of my favorite Yes music. And I found that it's best to kind of approach this album almost like an ambient album. Like it's an ambient Yes album. And, it's like if you just kind of take a few deep breaths and clear your head and sit down and just kind of let it wash over you. It is a magical experience, and it's totally reality distorting. Like this takes you out of whatever reality you exist in. And, I don't know what it's about, but I definitely hear the whole peace and love thing going throughout it. Like, let's not burn the forests. Let's not start these useless wars for money and cash. That being said, I do feel like John Anderson and Steve Howe are definitely the front men on this album, and everybody else is kind of in the background. Poor Rick Wakeman doesn't do much.
Yeah, he's like the ambient quality for sure. Like there's like nice keyboard textures around, and maybe
Yeah,
it's part of why he left for a little while. I don't know.
there's that, and I think also he was being pressured by the record company to be a solo artist. They were like, stop playing around with this.
Yeah,
So there's like politics going on too that keep Rick Wakeman kind of out of the picture here. And he, of course, famously he went over and recorded parts of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath
right.
in the same studio while this was going on, which is one of my favorite, probably my favorite Black Sabbath album.
That's a great one. I in high school I really liked that album. But I kind of have a mixed relationship with Topographic Oceans. Like half of it is amazing Yes music, and half of it I find pretty like either like just kind of boring, or it goes on too long, or it's kind of a mess. Like it's a flawed album for me. Like I think it could use some trimming.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think the second half of, like you said, side 2, the ritual. I mean, remembering High the Memory and the whole thing of Ritual is among the best Yes music. Period.
Oh yeah.
Like there's like pure elation, and it's the second half of side 2 is like it's like unbelievable. And Ritual is awesome, and that really comes out live too. Like on the live album Yes Shows, there's a really awesome version of Ritual on there. Yeah, I like the album. I also haven't heard it in so long. That's
Yeah.
like one of the Yes albums I've like have not heard. It's got to be over 10 years for me at least.
Wow.
It's time for
Wow.
a revisit.
I think so. Yeah, I like, especially like post pandemic, I've reevaluated a lot of those classic progressive rock albums. And the one point I wanted to make before we move on from Tales from Topographic Oceans is that I think that this is often lumped into a category with two of my other favorite albums, and that's A Passion Play and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, because, all of these kind of came out within like 2 years of each other. This one and Passion Play were 73. And of course, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway was 74. And they're kind of all known as the albums where prog took a step too far for a lot of like the mainstream audiences. But I think what's interesting is that with 40 years in between then and now, I think they've been pretty much reevaluated as essential parts of the catalog. And, I think that might be a subject for a video at some point. How do these albums get rehabilitated through time?
That's a good question. Yeah, staying power, like, the fact that we're still talking about them, and we're also the fact that we're talking about them as people who are not alive, 50
Right.
years ago, is a testament to the power of the music, right?
Yes.
And how relevant it still is. Whether some people love it or hate it is, I guess, it's opinion, right? But
Yeah.
it seems like more people tend to love them. And, The Lamb, for me, is a quintessential Genesis album, and I think it is now for a lot of people, but it certainly wasn't when it came out. It was very divisive, as far as I understand.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that, at the time, maybe it was a lot for people to take in, but 40 years we've all been listening to these. Well, I haven't been listening to it for 40 years, but just as a culture, collectively, we've been listening to them, and we understand their charms, and we also understand how special they are, because people don't really make records like this. At least they're not. They do, but they're not number one albums. They're not pop albums. So yeah, it's a really special time, I think, and I think maybe a lot of it is rose-colored glasses towards the past, because I think you'll find that if you look at a lot of what was going on back then, 90% of it didn't last. It's really just the small percentage of albums that keep being reevaluated, because great art, I think, is of the moment, and that's any kind of art. You could engage with it at any point in time, and it still speaks to the moment. And I think Topographic Oceans has things to say that are relevant to right now, sadly. But there are moments of this album that I find, touching on a spiritual level. This is the 5.1 mix that came out in, I want to say 2014, 2013. And this is out of print, and it's very hard to get a hold of. I bought this because YouTuber who goes by Life and Surround, who's actually one of my biggest influences. Like I watched him before I even considered making my own YouTube channel. He sold this to me, and he didn't price gouge me, so I appreciate that. So thank you, Life and Surround, for making this happen. It is a wonderful surround mix. There have been some complaints on the internet and stuff that parts of the track Ritual are out of sync. And to be honest with you, I am not that familiar with this album, but I compared it to the flat transfer that's included, and I don't hear anything that's out of sync. So,
interesting.
Maybe that's like something that affects only the stereo mixes and not the surround mixes. But I find that the surround mixes are revealing, to borrow a phrase from the album, revealing a lot of really the special qualities of this record. And it's also their best album cover, I think.
It's definitely one of them. That album cover, like, it fits the tone of the music perfectly.
It does.